7:39, approaching 7:40 in Trinidad and Tobago as we look eastwards along Traggery Road via the cameras of traffictt.com. And in fact, as you look further eastwards, you get towards the Queen's Park Oval, just on the left-hand side there, and just around the corner from the Queen's Park Oval is the British High Commission, quite appropriately located right next to the main cricket ground in Trinidad and Tobago. But let's return to our discussion. I'll tell you why. You'll see the connection when we eventually get to our discussion with our guests for our final segment this morning. Because on Monday's show, we focused on Human Rights Day and ending violence against women and girls. Remember the 16 days of activism coming to an end. We had a couple of female activists with us. Today, let's put the focus on men and hashtag Let's Talk TT. It's the third installment and aims to provide a safe platform for men to speak on issues that affect them, including male stereotyping, gender equality. It's an initiative led by the British High Commission. Yes, it's not all about Brexit. They have a lot of other things to talk about as well. Maybe if they round the corner by them have the best doubles in Trinidad and Tobago. You never know. That might be part of the discussion as well. It started in November, this third edition of Let's Talk TT, and we're joined by three personalities to give us some perspective on it, how it's going, how you can be part of it, how you can follow the dialogue. We have, of course, the High Commissioner, Tim Stew, who's here with us to offer some perspective on it, and as well, Amilcar Sanatan, who is the gentleman closest to me. He's a lecturer in geography at the University of the West Indies, and also Jeremy Edwards, founder of the Silver Lining Foundation. Good morning all. Thanks very much for joining us. High Commissioner, just bowl the first ball for us, shall we, given your proximity to the Queen's Park Oval, as to this third edition of the dialogue, what's it all about, and how people can be part of this particular dialogue.
Well, thank you, Fazir, first of all, for inviting us on this morning.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is an initiative we launched in spring of 2017, jointly with the European Union delegation. And as you said, it's there to provide a platform for local voices to talk about issues around gender-based violence, stereotyping, and those sorts of issues. Because they're really important. They're really important to my government because they're things that we tackle ourselves in the UK, and they're important to me as a person. I'm a father and a brother as well as a diplomat, and so I have a personal strong interest in this. And we've launched, as I say, last year we talked quite a lot about gender-based violence. We used an online platform to do that. Streaming live on Facebook, a discussion between government and civil society and private sector, and then followed that with some other events. And what those told us was that we were focused very much on women, because of course it is women who often are the victims of this violence. But what it told us that we needed to hear more men's voices on the discussion, because it was really only hearing the woman's perspective. And men, as well as being perpetrators of violence, are also the victims of it.
Indeed. And Jeremy Edwards, just tell us as to why you're on board with this particular initiative. Why do you see this as something worth supporting, and men especially getting involved in this particular dialogue?
Definitely. And I'd like to answer that question first by referencing one of the first interviews we gave, which was on your show in 2013. And Silver Lining Foundation addresses bullying and violence within the framework of sexual diversity. And you asked then, why is bullying important, given that there's crime and issues in the economy happening and so forth? And the answer to that was, young people, in this case we're talking about young men today, face so much violence and discrimination, persecution, bullying in schools, that they aren't allowed to achieve their fullest potential. And when they aren't allowed to do that, allowed that right to an education, then it affects long-term how they develop and how they're able to pursue a career path and contribute positively to society. So that's why, as Executive Director and founder of Silver Lining Foundation, I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion. And
it started in November. How has it been going so far as what is taking place, and how have you found the discussion, whatever dialogue is taking place at this stage?
It's not enough, because we don't see more men coming forward and talking about gender-based violence, whether they are perpetrators or even victims. And it's, part of the culture that we've created, that men don't necessarily talk about these things. So definitely, while this conversation with Let's Talk TT is a good start, it definitely needs to go further, and we as a movement, as Amilcar and I were chatting about earlier, need to coalesce a bit more so that we can get a coherent, more powerful message going forward for men to rally around.
At least though, Amilcar Sanatan, this is a step in the right direction. And I know there are other initiatives, there are many other efforts to try to get men and males to deal with their issues and be more forthcoming. From your own point of view, give us your sense of this particular initiative.
This initiative is very important because I think we move beyond that binary of the good man versus the bad man. And that is not productive. And we've seen that in terms of as a communication method is not productive, but also as a political approach to say that there are two types of men who hate women and men who also are not violent. What we have done in Let's Talk TT is to talk about men's responsibility, and all men are responsible for ending violence, whether it be men's violence against themselves, men's violence against women, but also male violence against other men. So gender-based violence, we have shown the complexity of the problem and why men must step up to this plate. And
because it is such a complex problem, because it is mired in stereotypes, with generations of certain types of behavior and so on, how have you seen, as Jeremy said, maybe there's enough happening, but have you seen the benefits of an initiative like this? Have you seen people willing to open up and acknowledge certain issues on different sides? Have you seen that actually happen?
We have seen the benefits. So one of the spheres is like where I teach at the university. We have a course called Geography 3115 around equality and social justice. A number of the students who are men as well, they might have started off as physical geographers, but say they want to advance a pro-feminist way to advance gender justice. When we work with young men, they also say that they don't want narrow meanings of manhood. They don't want to be what happened in the past. They don't want to live in the shadow of masculinity. So the cultural scripts of what tells us to be a man or a society is up for change, but we need many men and to show diversity in age, race, sexuality, but also geographies and background, to speak out and to sit down together and say, this is an issue worth standing up for, and you are not alone.
High Commissioner Stu, how can people access this information, whatever dialogues are taking place along different platforms and different fora? How can people get involved?
So you can follow it online, Let's Talk TT, on our Facebook site, UK and TT, or on my own Twitter feed at HC Tim Stew. But also these gentlemen, and this is the point, it's not really to hear about me, it's to hear these brilliant local voices, people who are already engaged on this issue, and give a bit more profile, and as Jeremy said, sort of coalesce a little bit more, so you can get a really sustained and good conversation going on these issues.
Is everything happening in cyberspace? Is everything online, or are there actually events and occasions where people are actually getting together to meet and discuss things?
So we've done a number of radio interviews over the last few weeks, pushing the discussion along and debate along through radio too. But you know, Let's Talk TT is a campaign. It's not a one-off event. So there will be more to come in 2019.
And from your own sense of it, started in 2017, do you feel that this particular sort of dialogue is achieving the objectives that you and, of course, the High Commission, the government, the UK government would be hoping to start that sort of dialogue?
It's steady work. As these gentlemen know, they've been doing it all their lives, but it's steady work. But yeah, it's getting there, and I think what we're hearing is a much more informed debate as we go along. And as I say, this time, I mean, I've been to lots of gender events which actually turn out to be women's events, and I found myself as, not just in this country but in many countries over my career, as sort of one or two men in the room, and we've got to move that along. We're not trying to put all the blame or all the focus on men, but we need to have many more men's voices out there.
And Jeremy Edwards, tell us a bit more about the Silver Lining Foundation. But I'm glad you reminded me about the first time you were here in 2013, because at my age, the memory fades very quickly. But if people want to find out a bit more about the foundation itself, you could tell us a bit more, and indeed how they can access the services of your organization.
Right, so you can find us on Facebook, the Silver Lining Foundation, or on our website, silverliningtt.com. Our services are really education-based. So we provide group therapy and counseling to LGBT kids as well as their parents, and we also do Safer Schools teacher training as well for teachers who want to learn how to manage a diverse classroom and manage differences, whether it be on sexual orientation, gender, race, creed, class. We offer that kind of training to them. So it's free and accessible, you can reach out to us, and we are more than happy to accommodate schools.
And are you seeing more men, more boys, more young men being part of this discussion, being more willing, and that, are we going to see the day very soon? The next time the High Commissioner turns up on a gender-based event, there actually are as many men as women in the room?
Not as yet, but we are seeing more men coming forward. Even in our own events, I think, and in our own organization, a lot of people critique us and say, we're only seeing men in our organization. And that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for an organization like ours that deals with gender-based violence and LGBT issues and stuff. So definitely this is one of the platforms. As the High Commissioner said, Let's Talk TT is an ongoing campaign, and we try to incorporate it into our work going forward, and hopefully we can see more men coming forward.
So you're actually getting buff up having too many men in the discussion, which is a welcome turnaround in that sense. But Amilcar Sanatan, from your own perspective, because you are in the university environment, a lot of young people, maybe progressive ideas, or maybe seeped in stereotypes as well based on their upbringing. What sort of dialogue is taking place in that environment as far as young men and the whole question of violence and gender violence and all that is taking place there? What's happening in the university environment?
I think the two major areas that people are thinking about is, what does accountability mean and what does it look like? Are we accountable to the women's movement? Are we accountable to ourselves? And that is why the Me Too movement allowed men to think about their position. What is our position on sexual harassment in the workplace and so on? But the next part is thinking about male privilege. So even though we try to promote male voices, how do we promote male voices not at the expense of women's development and priorities? So male privilege and male accountability are two important aspects in the work that we do. And getting people at the university is one level, but people think that is just a privileged group in society. The university is made up of young people. We have 19,000 students at our campus from diverse social backgrounds. And that's why we have to work with that important community of people, but also students in secondary school, to empower young men to take leadership in their lives.
Yeah, it seems to be so much of an us versus them sort of discussion, which is very much part of the politics as well in Trinidad and Tobago and the UK. Let's not forget in our discussion with the High Commissioner. But we're not going to go into the politics. We'll take a quick break. It's a no politics. They have been warned by the producer. Not even international politics I can touch this morning. We'll be back right after this break with some final words from our three guests. 7:56 in Trinidad and Tobago. As we continue to look at that Tragarete Road area just around the corner from the British High Commission, where the High Commission has a lovely view of the pitch, where unfortunately he won't be watching any Test cricket involving the West Indies and England, because England won't be coming to Trinidad and Tobago next year during their tour of the Caribbean. They're going to their more popular venues like Barbados and Antigua and St. Kitts and St. Lucia. But we're right here in downtown Port-of-Spain with our three guests: High Commissioner Tim Stew, the British High Commissioner. We also have Jeremy Edwards, founder of the Silver Lining Foundation, and Amilcar Sanatan, lecturer in geography at the University of the West Indies. We're talking about the third iteration of hashtag Let's Talk TT. Lots of discussions related to males and men's issues that are happening online, and we've given you the contact information as well. In the few minutes that we have left, Amilcar Sanatan, any particular issues that you wanted to highlight that you felt should be relevant to the discourse? Yeah,
I'd just like to reiterate the importance of campaigns such as Let's Talk TT. Why? Because we put in the issue of masculinity at the center of discussion. And that has an interplay or a connection to things like marginalization, the hardship people face, that when we say the bigger man in society, not looking out for the smaller man, we are steadily approaching possibly 500 murders for Trinidad and Tobago this year, which should have been up.
Maybe we've crossed it already and we don't even know.
So I mean, and that'll be up from what we had with 494 last year. And more security and military approaches to it alone does not address the issue of crime and violence in our society. And that is why we need to have serious conversations with men in the area of domestic violence, but even homicides, on why we need to address how violence becomes a marker for our identity.
And Jeremy, and I kind of prefaced this when we were going to the break, the us versus them mentality, as if, you know, if you agree to something that is being said that is critical, you are conceding ground to the other side, whoever that other side is. I don't know if you're seeing any softening of that position, or do people still feel, whether you're talking about males giving up ground we're losing out to the women and the women's movement.
Yes.
We're losing. Do you see it happening in that
Yes.
sort of dialogue?
And you can see it in the online threads and conversations that are happening. But I also just want to add to Amilcar's point as well, that our research on bullying in secondary schools shows that men especially have a greater proclivity to physical and verbal bullying in schools. And a lot of them don't necessarily have the social and emotional skills needed to deal with conflict in a healthier, positive way. And so this is why it's important for the Ministry of Education and for all other stakeholders in education to deal with this issue, because, like Amilcar says, what happens in the schools can transmute into wider society and end up with the high incidence of crime and criminality that we have.
And High Commissioner, as with the UK government facilitating this sort of dialogue, this particular platform, are you satisfied that the degree of reach that it's been able to reach the sort of areas, the most vulnerable, the most inclined towards different types of activity? Are you satisfied with the way it's been going so far?
So, Fazia, you know, we work in a bunch of areas. As Amilcar said, the connection to the security issues and crime issues in this country is direct there. We're working on the hard end of some of those with the new police commissioner and Minister of National Security, of course, and on terrorism threats and so on. We talked about that earlier this year. But this may feel like the softer end. But it's so vital that we have this debate and we have this discussion and we hear those men's voices. Have we got far enough? No, not yet. We want to hear a lot more, and we need to hear a much wider range.
Indeed. Well, let's hope that the discussion continues to be an important one. Let's hope that the High Commissioner could use his influence at some time to get some test cricket for us at the Queen's Park Oval, so he could make good use of that window, just where his office is located. It's kind of pointless without going through all the expense of positioning the window just to watch the cricket when there's no cricket at the Oval. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe that's for another different talk TT in that sense. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Let's hope the discussion continues and is certainly very productive. And people are willing to open up and be far more honest about these different issues that are very, very relevant to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll take a quick break and I'll be back to wrap up the show.